All right, welcome everyone to today's Google Webmaster Central Office Hours Hangouts. My name is John Mueller. I'm a Webmaster Trends Analyst here at Google in Switzerland, and part of what we do is talk with webmasters and publishers like the ones here in the Hangout now. There are a bunch of questions submitted already, but as always, if any of you here in the Hangout are new to this kind of Hangout, and have a question or something on your mind, feel free to speak up before we get started with the rest. Nothing?
I have a quick question about Search Console again, John.
All right, go for it.
Are there any plans, you know the URL removal tool in Search Console, are there any plans to make it so that we can remove groups of URLs in one go via wildcards or anything like that? Because if we need to de-index anything, then we have to do it per URL basis using the Search Console, whereas if we've got loads of URLs that are being indexed, like that example I showed you last week, where you remember the non-ASCII versions of the URLs and the robots text file wasn't working, so therefore all these URLs with parameters were indexed. Now, if we wanted to remove them, there's no easy way of removing millions of URLs, but if we could use wildcards, then there would be. So, just wonder if that feature's ever going to get built in, or
I doubt it. I mean, I can't make predictions forever because that's a really long time, you know. But I don't see that happening in the near future, primarily because the tool isn't really meant for kind of this mass URL removal. It's really for like individual pieces of content that you need to get out quickly, or for the whole website if you index like the wrong site, for example, or like a staging server, or your private. I don't know if you have a hard disk connected to your network and suddenly that's public, those kind of things. What I do in a case like yours is create a sitemap file with the new change states and submit that so that we can kind of, through the natural crawl, discover these URLs a lot faster and then drop them when we see that they return 404 or 410.
Okay. Well, thank you, John.
Sure. All right.
John, can I just ask a quick? John,
sure.
Can I just ask a quick question? Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, hold on. I can only see me.
Go for it.
Right. Okay. The other week in Webmaster Hangout, you said sometimes some websites have so many pages that are relevant for a query that in actual fact they find it really difficult to rank for generic queries. Yeah. You probably don't remember it. But anyway, the question is, say you've got a huge e-commerce website or any huge website, and it goes primary theme, so say the root, and this is what the whole site's about architecturally, and the categories, and then so the categories may be shoes, and then the subcategories may be red shoes, and then there may be something underneath that's red shoe size 4. Yeah. Effectively, if red shoe size 4 is more relevant to red shoes, this is where there's an issue that kicks in, isn't it? Because you often see on loads of sites that their product pages outrank their target category pages because they're kind of more relevant.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the site and I guess the type of content they have there, but it can definitely happen that a lower level page ranks above a higher level from a category point of view. For example, that's not something I'd say is inherently broken. That might just be the way that things work. So, for example, maybe you have like I don't know, an electronics company that has one product that's really, really popular, and the rest is kind of like, well, nobody really knows them. But if people want search for that brand name, they really want that specific product because that's what they're kind of known for. Then it makes sense for us to show that product page above maybe the category or even the home page of the company.
Do you remember, I was reading something recently that talks about weight multiplied by feature, yeah? Is that what you mean by that? So ultimately, there can be some pages that have certain elements or features that are of more importance than other pages. And so I just saw it in some of the patents actually around crawling, weight multiplied by feature, around change as well. So if that feature changes and it has X weight, it's kind of almost an importance factor.
I don't know. That's hard to say. I see this more kind of just from an organic point of view, in that some individual product pages are just more relevant to users because that's kind of what this company is known for. And it's not that I try to kind of artificially change that around on the website or anything like that, because I mean we're ranking those pages for those queries, so that's not something where I'd inherently see it as something that the webmaster needs to fix or needs to change.
But sorry, I'm going to stop in a minute because I know people want to ask questions, and there's loads of questions there. One final thing on that. So from an internal link perspective, can that happen, i.e. you end up with lots of subcategory and individual product pages ranking above category pages if the internal link count almost is kind of in the wrong order? Yeah.
Wrong order. It's hard to say. I mean, you definitely want some kind of hierarchy on your website with regards to the internal links to make it easier for us and for users to understand where these product pages kind of sit, in which categories they belong, and to understand how the categories fit together, what the context is between these individual pages. So you definitely need some amount of internal linking between those pages to make that clear. And usually that's not something where I see sites have problems with, because if you're using a common CMS, then you automatically have this kind of hierarchical structure, and you have links down to the product and from the product back to the categories. That's kind of like the default setup. So that's usually not something where I'd say, oh, you have bad internal linking, you need to kind of fix that, because usually that kind of just works.
Unless you end up with an infinite loop.
Well, I mean, that's part of crawling. Like, you go from one page to every other page, and you end up on that initial page again. It's always supposed to be kind of like tied in together.
Okay. Thanks, John. Cheers.
Sure.
Thanks.
All right. Let me double check the questions here. Maybe just one to kind of get started with. Can you set a date for some mini site audits? We're an affiliate site, and our rivals get 10 times our traffic, but numerous agencies and experts can't tell us why their site is better. Could your algorithm be wrong? Can you take a look? Sure. I mean, this is something we can probably look at again in one of the future Hangouts to see how we can restructure things to kind of take into account more of these site audits as well. In general, when you're looking at affiliate sites and you're kind of competing against other affiliates, that's a really tricky situation for us, because oftentimes these sites will just be equivalent. And if we go to our engineers or to the quality team and say, hey, this affiliate site is not ranking, but this other affiliate site is ranking, they'll come back to us and say, well, we're already showing the content. Why should we rank this other site above this other site that's essentially the same thing? So that's kind of the point where you have to take what you're providing, and make sure that that's really significantly better than everything else that's out there. Because otherwise, the ranking team will come back to us and say, well, we already have the same thing there. Why should we change things just to swap out like one against the other when they're actually the same? So really kind of take that step and try to figure out what you could do to not just be an affiliate like the others, but actually be significantly better. Let's see. If a website was hit by Penguin, is it possible that its rankings could have remained affected all this time and that they could be restored by the next Penguin? Yes, I guess to some extent, if your site is affected by one algorithm and that algorithm hasn't updated, then that part of your rankings will probably remain the same. But luckily, we have lots and lots of signals that we use for ranking, so it's not the case that your site is like infinitely stuck there until that algorithm updates. There always is room for change. Even if one algorithm says this thing, then maybe lots of other signals might say, well, actually, it's a lot better than you think, and then we'd rank that appropriately. So it's not the case that you're like locked in until things change on our side. Are we correct to assume that if we've recovered from a manual penalty, that we need to build Google's trust again, even though you say you hold no grudges in the algorithm? If so, what metrics should we be looking at to help us? It's hard to say there. It kind of depends on what specifically was happening there. But in general, if a manual action is resolved, then that manual action has no effect anymore. And all that's left is really the rest of our algorithms, how they interact with your website. And some of those algorithms might be looking at similar things that the manual action was looking at. So if you've cleaned things up significantly, then sometimes that just takes a while for all of these algorithms to kind of take that new state into account. And of course, like I mentioned before, it's not the case that you're locked in any position. You can really work on your website across the board with pretty much everything to really show that your website is essentially the one that we should be showing for these types of queries. But obviously, that's kind of broad and really hard to kind of turn into something more specific to work on. So one thing I do in a case like this is really get a lot of feedback from your peers. So go post in the Webmaster Help Forum on our side, maybe in other Webmaster forums, and really get feedback, maybe really the hard kind of feedback that you don't want to hear from your peers, so that you kind of have something that you can work on, that you can focus on moving forward. There's no one answer that fits all websites for that. Can you rank highly just with branded links going to only your homepage, or do you need an element of deep links with more optimized anchor text in order to rank highly? Sure, you can rank highly with any kinds of links and other signals that we pick up. It's not the case that you need one specific signal for your website to appear in the search results. I think that's kind of the nice part of having so many signals that we use for search, is that these sites, when you're ranking even for the same kind of keywords, you don't have to do exactly the same thing. So some sites might be ranking because they have a lot of recommendations from before. Other sites might be ranking for other reasons. And these are all things that we try to pick up on, and we try to mix them together, find the right way to rank things. So just because a competitor is doing one approach for SEO doesn't mean you have to do exactly the same thing. Will Google devalue a page that's being linked from the footer? Does linking from a site's navigation have the same value as linking from a site's footer in terms of PageRank flow? So it wouldn't be the case that we would devalue a site because it's linked from the footer. That generally doesn't mean that much. from our point of view, we try to differentiate between the main primary content of a page and kind of the boilerplate, which is everything around this content, which could be like the heading, the sidebar, the menus, the footer as well. And we try to kind of, at least from a content point of view, understand what is kind of happening there. So with that in mind, it's not the case that we would say, well, footer links are bad, or we'll treat them less or give them less weight. It really depends on the whole website, on the pages themselves. From a content point of view, if you've repeated the same link or the same text in the footer across the website, then that's kind of something that's general for your website, but not really something that we have to kind of value for each individual page. So just because you have something in the footer doesn't mean that all of those pages that use that footer are suddenly relevant for that text, for example.
John, on the footer links, is that the same for linking externally to internally? Because I was under the assumption if you had a load of links linking externally from your footer, then that is to some extent some sort of spam signal or Panda related issue.
No, I wouldn't see that as a spam signal. I think that's generally fine. I think the main thing to kind of consider is that if you're linking site-wide from one website in the footer, for example, or if you have a text site-wide in the footer, then that's probably not the same weight as if you had that on so many different separate pages that were completely separate. So it's not so much the case that not so much the issue that it's in the footer. It's just, well, we've seen this across so many other pages on this website that we think it's probably not the most relevant thing on the whole website. So, for example, if you have to put a legal disclaimer in your footer for legal reasons, that doesn't mean that the rest of the content on those pages will be devalued. But rather, we'll try to figure out, oh, this is a disclaimer that's copied across the site. So if someone is explicitly looking for this disclaimer, fine, we'll show one of the pages from the site. But otherwise, we won't treat it as a primary content for that page.
Okay. And does that go as well if it's exact match anchor or not? So if you had blue widgets, red widgets, green widgets, as some sites often do in the footer, and they're linking internally to the pages or even linking externally, are you still saying that that's not going to be, you're not treating it as though that's some sort of quality issue at all in terms of anchor text?
That shouldn't be. So usually I see that more in the sense that it starts looking like keyword stuffing.
Yeah.
Not so much that from a spammy link point of view, but obviously you could overdo it as well and make it look really spammy. But usually that just looks like keyword stuffing to us, and that like you keep repeating the same words and phrases across. I don't know. Sometimes you have like hundreds of these links in the footer, and actually that's not content that really works for the user. So our keyword stuffing algorithms might look at that and say, well, that's not really so awesome. But if you're using it as a way to kind of create an internal structure within your website, if these are things that people are using to actually navigate within your website, then that's not something I kind of like artificially suppress just because it's in the footer.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you.
So on that, sorry, on that, John. Hello.
Yes. Go for it.
On that. It's fine to put, say, your categories in your footer.
Sure. I mean, if people are using it there, sure. But if you already have those categories on the page, then that's not really going to change anything. Mm-hmm. So if you have a normal menu on the side or on the top with those categories anyway, then that's already covered. You don't need to kind of mirror that in the footer.
So right, okay. So effectively, you're kind of then just utilizing, well, you're just filling up the boilerplate areas with duplicates. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, in a case like that, I'd focus on where people are actually using your site, what they're doing to kind of navigate within your website, and usually that's not in the footer. I could imagine there might be some situations where you have a really long page and you also have a navigation in the footer that people use. But at least from an SEO point of view, for us it's important that we can understand the structure of the site. But you don't need to mirror those category links in multiple places.
Is a massive mega menu counted as duplicate content across pages? So say you consider boilerplate, menus, headers, footers, footer text, etc. A huge mega menu, would that be considered boilerplate?
Probably, yeah, because if that's something that you repeat across your website, then that's something we'd look at as kind of being boilerplate text.
So it's probably not a good idea to have very few words in a massive, massive, massive mega menu.
We should still be able to figure that out. I mean, if those few words are like the primary content on this page, the thing this page wants to be found for, then we should be able to figure that out.
But if somebody does a better job of creating unique and compelling content that matches the query.
Well, that's always a possibility. I mean, it's also an opportunity, right? But I think that's less an issue of whether or not they're using a gigantic menu within the page or not.
Okay. All right. Thanks, John. Cheers.
All right. Wow, this boilerplate topic. We need to maybe do a separate session on boilerplate. I see that's an interesting topic. Over weeks, we recognized an amazing amount of crawls from Applebot on news websites because of artificial traffic, duration, and pages per visit go down. Is that bad for SEO, or what should we do? Should we disallow them from crawling or add a crawl delay? Essentially, we don't really see that because we're not Applebot, so we don't know what's happening there, and that wouldn't really affect us from our point of view. So that's something kind of between you and Applebot with regards to how much you want to have crawled, how much you don't want to have crawled. Just like what you have crawled for Google is kind of between us and you, and not something that Applebot probably cares about. Some affiliates we work with are requesting our permission to scrape certain sections of our product pages. Is this something we should steer clear of? What negative impact, if any, can this have to my organic rankings? This is kind of up between you and your affiliates in this case. Essentially, what can happen is that your affiliates start ranking for this content as well, and it might even happen that they rank above your content for the same content. So that's something that you kind of have to keep in mind, and I think that's just a part of the general relationship with affiliates, in that this kind of change can happen, and it's not the case that we would say we would always show the original site above all other variations, because sometimes an affiliate site does something really fantastic in a really interesting, unique way, and we might think, well, this is actually the better search result for people, even though it's not the original source of this product, for example. So that's kind of something you have to think about in general when you're working with affiliates. We noticed some links, some sites link to us with clean URLs, but when you click on them, an affiliate parameter is appended to the URL because the sites are signed up to a third-party affiliate network, so PageRank still flow in these situations. That probably depends on what's technically happening in a case like that. If those links are clear on this website in the sense that they don't have a rel no follow attached to them, then probably we'll pick that up as normal links. What could potentially happen is that there's a JavaScript on the page that adds a rel no follow to those links, and in that case, when we render the pages, we'll see the no follow, and we'll say, well, we won't follow this link. So that really kind of depends on the actual situation there. So one thing you could do is look at the way the page renders in a browser, switch maybe the user agent to Googlebot, and then double check what those links actually look like. Is there any suggested method or markup for paid products that are also known as something else other than their like MPN or SKU? Let's see. So I guess from a structured data point of view, there's a kind of a markup that you can give for similar to that gives us a little bit of information there. But what you probably want to do is just use a rel canonical in a case like that, and pick one canonical version of your product and say this is the one that I actually want to have indexed. This is the one where all of the signals should be combined to, and use the rel canonical across those different variations that you have there. John, when will Google release the new Penguin update? I can't give you any timing on that, sorry. So I've kind of given too many dates that didn't make it, so I don't really want to kind of go out on a limb there with that specifically. Sorry.
Are you saying that it's not rolling out at the minute then? Because there's been some chatter about potentially it's been rolled out already. So you're saying that process still hasn't started yet?
I don't have any information that I can share on that at the moment. So
Okay.
I'm pretty sure when we start rolling it out, we'll have a message to kind of post. But at the moment, I don't have anything specific to kind of announce. For brands with the ability to edit knowledge graphs, can you explain how Google verifies official representative? We have multiple brands in knowledge graph, and they're all set up the same, but some have the ability to add and some don't. I need to double check with the team on that, actually. I think that question has come up before, but I don't know if I got an answer from the team on that. Can the same ranking signal carry different weight depending on the website, and will the weight be dependent on other ranking signals and factors it finds, or will the same signal treat different sites with equal weight? That's a pretty theoretical and complicated question, I guess. In general, the thing to keep in mind is that these signals and the way that we kind of look at them, that they can change over time. They can change between sites and especially over time. For example, you could imagine a situation where suddenly one phrase is really popular, it's in the news everywhere, people are talking about it, then that's something where we probably want to change our ranking signals to say, well, we'll try to pick up more the new content for this specific query. And when that time passes, then maybe we'll pick up the older content, the more evergreen content again for those queries. So these are things that can definitely change from time to time and from site to site and even from query to query over time. So it's certainly not the case that everything is static, and once we have one ranking set up, then nothing will ever change there. What's the difference between all-in URL and sitemaps? Sitemaps are also a ranking factor. I'm not actually sure what this question means. So sitemaps themselves aren't really a ranking factor in the sense that we're not going to rank a site higher because it has a sitemap file. But the sitemap file helps us to better understand how we need to crawl and index those pages, which pages have changed recently, which ones we need to look at again. So in that regard, indirectly, of course, the crawling and the indexing does play a role in ranking, where if we can't crawl it or if we don't have it crawled and indexed, we can't show it in rankings. But if we have crawled it already and nothing has changed, then adding a sitemap file won't change anything from my point of view. We have 12 TLDs for different languages. Do I need to implement the Hreflang tag for each domain in each domain, or do you understand that we have the same content in different languages by different TLDs? We generally don't try to figure it out too far on our own. So if you have markup in the Hreflang that tells us exactly how you have things split up, then that really helps us. So one thing I would do there is definitely look at the home pages, for example, the most important pages on your website, and make sure that you have the Hreflang markup between those versions set up properly, so that we can, at least for those important pages, swap things out where we need to. that's something that if you have 12 versions of these pages, then that's probably not too crazy to do even manually. For the whole website, obviously, you'll need to figure out some kind of a scalable way to handle that. And usually that's, I'd say, almost secondary to setting up at least the home pages so that they're set up properly. Because especially if someone is searching for your brand name, then that query itself doesn't give us more information about which language they're searching in, for example. So that's something where the home page, the more important pages on a website, really, it helps us to better understand which version is which one and how they can be swapped out so that we can do the ranking better there.
But if those TLDs are country specific, you'll work that out easy enough, won't you?
Yeah, we'll recognize that they're country specific, but we won't recognize that they belong to the same group of sites. So if, for example, we would rank the German version in Switzerland, then we'd show the German version for Swiss users rather than maybe the Swiss version that we also know about, because we'd rank them as separate sites. But with the Hreflang, we'd be able to swap that out and say, oh, instead of this German version, we'll show the Swiss version. That's a better experience for your Swiss users, maybe the right currencies, those kind of things.
John, is this maybe why we see a lot of Australian sites showing up for generic queries in UK? .com.au seems to appear.
Sometimes that can happen, yeah. When it's hard for us to figure out what...
They're both English language, so this is the issue, isn't it? They're both English, but then you end up with loads of Australian sites.
I mean, theoretically, we should be able to figure that out better on our side, where if we can tell that the query is something where the user wants to find something local, then we shouldn't be showing sites from the other half of the world.
So if it's an electrician, you see, I get listings for Australian electricians showing up, so that's not really going to be much use for me.
Yeah, that sounds more like a bug on our side. That's something where if you can send me the queries that you did and maybe a screenshot, then I can take that on with the search quality team to figure out what exactly is happening there so that we can fix that. I mean, to some extent, those sites could be improving that by using Hreflang, but if you're an electrician in Australia, you're not going to have a homepage for the UK just so that you can swap that out, because you don't need a homepage for the UK if you're just doing stuff in Australia.
Yeah, no, bro, right, I'll take some screen grabs next time I see it. Thanks.
Sure. Great. We have an online shop about the text to HTML ratio. Sometimes we have just 4% text, but there are more than 800 words on a site. Will it influence our ranking negatively? As far as I know, we don't use the text to HTML ratio for anything. So this is something that I think some SEO tools came up with at some point, but from our point of view, we don't use that at all. I wouldn't focus on a metric like that unless there's something of value that you can pull out of that which works for your users, because maybe what you could be looking at there is seeing that these pages are kind of bloated HTML, and when you serve them to users, especially on mobile, it slows everything down. So that's one aspect that could be playing a role there, which is more between you and your users. But at least from a search, from an SEO point of view, we don't look at the text to HTML ratio at all. About internal links, some SEO software tells me to use just one anchor text for one URL, but that's not easy, and sometimes it makes no sense to me. What's your point of view to improve a ranking? From my point of view, internal links are really important so that we understand the context of your pages, so we understand the structure of your site. But it's not the case that you need to artificially limit your kind of internal linking past that point. So I think there's kind of this minimal amount of internal linking that's necessary for us to be able to crawl and index your site properly. But above that is essentially up to you. And sometimes it makes sense to have multiple versions of links pointing at the same content, especially when you do things like user studies and you realize, oh, users don't find that link here. They prefer to find a link down here. And sometimes that really helps make it easier for people to go through your website to find what they're actually looking for. So I just watch out for kind of that minimal amount of internal linking, and everything you do past that is really kind of up to you. Should your strongest pages have the most internal links going to it? Again, this is kind of up to you. As long as we can discover those pages and recognize them, crawl and index them properly, anything past kind of that minimal amount of internal linking is kind of up to you. I think when it comes to pages that you want to kind of promote on your website, things like making sure it has a link from the home page, that probably helps. Oftentimes that happens naturally, in that if you have a new product, then you'll announce it on your homepage, and people will be able to find the link there and actually go to that product page. And that helps us to better understand, you think this page is really important. It doesn't mean your users will confirm that it's really important, but at least we understand from your point of view, this is something we should focus on a little bit more. Let's see. Last Panda update. One of my clients' site got hit, and Google is no longer showing the homepage as a result for important queries, but a not-so-relevant subpage instead. We've updated the homepage, but it won't show for the search results still. What else can we do? This is something where we probably need to take a look at the specific site and the URLs and the queries that you're seeing there. So what I'd recommend doing there is posting this maybe to one of the Webmaster Help forums. If you post it to our forum, we can pick it up there and take a look as well. But maybe there's something easy that you can do. Maybe there's something broken with the markup on those pages. Usually there's a reason why we would pick up something like that. And sometimes it might just be that this is actually natural, in that, as we mentioned before, sometimes one specific product page or category page is really the most important thing on a website. So if someone searches for that brand or company, then by showing that page, we're showing what people are actually trying to find. But again, I try to get more feedback from your peers, from other webmasters. If a user was searching for a product in plural, for example, red cars instead of red car, would Google assume this would be a category-level search over a product-level search and show results based on that? I don't know. Maybe. It seems easy to try out with search results, just by playing around with the different versions. Sometimes we recognize plurals as being synonyms, where we say, well, this page mentions red car, but actually it has a lot of red cars on it, and maybe people mean red car and red cars are kind of the same. But it's probably not always the case. And I imagine there might be some situations where you see us actually showing more category pages than product pages, and some situations where we show just kind of the same mix. So that's something you could try out and see what happens there. If my domain is blacklisted because of newsletters, does it have an impact for the ranking process, for Googlebot, and the search results? So imagine blacklisted there is on email blacklists, and in general, we don't use email blacklists for ranking. So that's something that's very separate from the normal search ranking process there. But still, I guess if you know your website is blacklisted by these email blacklists, then maybe that's something you can clean up and actually fix, right? So from that point of view, I'd probably look at that as well. What about a one-page website? Because no link juice is possible, no page rank. Sure, a one-page website is perfectly fine. There are lots of really big sites that, well, not big sites, I guess, but well-known sites that have a one-page website. And that's something that can definitely rank in the search results as well, where we try to pick up the content that's relevant on those pages and show that. I guess the tricky part there is if you're mixing multiple very different aspects on a single web page, and it's really hard for us to recognize what this page should really be ranking for. So, for example, I don't know if you have on top of the long page, you have an article about shoes, and on the bottom you have something about cars. Then what is this page actually about? Is it about shoes or about cars? It's really hard to tell if everything is on the same page. So sometimes I think it makes sense to split things up into multiple pages, but if you have something that works really well on a single page, then sure, go for that.
But that's the same for a lot of blogs or blog posts. Like they might have a category page and it's got all the latest articles. Now, generally, we might say, okay, we'll block them or we'll block them or no index them because it's only duplicate. But would that be treated the same? Because you'd have loads of different articles about different things, but it's just the latest articles, for example. Is that going to be the same kind of methodology? Is Google going to get confused by seeing that page and not probably rank it for anything?
We shouldn't get too confused, especially if we can pick up the articles directly, so we can pick those up separately. What will probably happen with a page like that is if someone is searching for a weird mixture that isn't found in just one article, then that might be a good page to show. So from that point of view, that might be something that makes sense, but I think in some cases you have something less like category pages and more like tags, and then if you have, I don't know, hundreds of tag pages which just have all of these mixtures across the website, then that might be worth kind of blocking from indexing, because those individual tag pages don't really have a real coherent structure that makes sense to rank them as separate pages.
Yeah, no, makes sense.
All right. Let's open things up for questions from all of you. I see the chat counter keeps going up, so something must be happening.
Hey, John. I have a few questions regarding the manual penalties issued over the weekend. So they were, as far as I understand, they were mainly issued to people who write reviews in exchange for free products and link to the product page or the website or some other pages. Let me know if that's about a good summary.
I guess for some of them, yes. I mean, the manual web spam team works on lots of things. Sometimes things kind of get clumped together and come out at the same time, but they're still doing other things at the same time too. So I wouldn't say every manual action that came out over the weekend is just this one specific problem. But definitely, at least from the threads that I looked at in the help forum, there were a bunch of these cases.
And you haven't done this before, so I kind of wanted to ask whether, I don't know, is there any specific, because you mentioned patterns in some of your responses on the help forums, and I wanted to know if there's any specific pattern that you are looking for, because some brands might be scared that, oh my God, we cannot send products to people anymore because somebody might get penalized, and it's the same craze that was with the press releases back in the day when people got scared that you cannot use press releases anymore or Google will penalize you, and it was more about the intent of how you're using the press releases, whether you're using them as an actual marketing technique or as a way to gain links for SEO. Is this the case here as well?
I wouldn't necessarily kind of mix those two situations together, but I think the main problem here is really that a lot of these links appeared on those websites because of this kind of relationship in the background, where people were getting free products to try out, maybe a free service, or some were even being paid to post blog posts. So in a situation like that, I see this as, I don't know, from my point of view, kind of a legitimate marketing tactic, in that you give people something to try out, they write about it, but I think it's important that really there's a kind of disclaimer on those links, or even in the text, perhaps, that really makes it clear that there's this kind of relationship in the background. And from my point of view, if you have the no follow on those links, then that essentially solves it for us. Then we see that people are writing about your product. Maybe they're doing a legitimate review of your products, and it's really something valuable for the internet on a whole. But we realize that kind of the links that come out of this review are there because of this interaction in the background, and with the no-follow, we can understand that and kind of say, fine, that's kind of clear for us. We can deal with that.
John, John, sorry. What about the? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Sorry. What about the difference between the loan and the gift type of thing? Because I mean, I'm kind of involved in this a little bit, and there are kind of, it's a bit of a large line between when someone will loan someone something to review, such that they kind of get no financial benefit out of it, versus giving them something.
I would still see that as something where you're essentially encouraging this content to be created for you, and that's something where I'd still kind of expect a no-follow on those links.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't mean that there's absolutely no value in those posts or in that content being created. That can rank on its own as well. It's just that you're not kind of doing something to get links for that. So you're not providing something of value, even if it's just for a temporary time, in order to get links.
Matt Cutts did a whole video on this, didn't he? On what's a gift, what isn't, whether it's a loan, what the value is, whether it makes sense that a travel writer gets a free meal in a restaurant versus a tech blogger getting a free meal in a restaurant. Essentially, there's a whole video somewhere of him going into this in detail. And he essentially says the same as you, that actually it's a perfectly normal business practice. It's been going on for years, that people have been given samples out, but it has to make sense, and you have to have a perceived value between a free T-shirt and a free laptop, and Google has to somehow work that out.
Yeah, I think
I also think, to a large extent, it's not the case that these bloggers are trying to manipulate the search results. So it's not something that they're purposely trying to do, but they're just a lot of kind of these advertising networks that kind of broker the deals between the product suppliers and the bloggers, and they kind of take into account that, well, some of these links will be no-followed and some of them won't be, and there's kind of this additional value past just the product review of getting those links. And we just want to make sure that it's really clear that you can do this kind of deal between the product supplier and someone who writes about it, as long as it's really disclosed for us, so that we understand that these links are not really the same as some random person going out and buying something and trying it out.
John, on that note, you know that recently in the UK there's been a huge inquiry by the Competition and Markets Authority into online reviews and unpaid, paid non-disclosure, etc., bogus reviews, and bloggers that are being paid to write reviews, etc. Is that anything to do at all with Google suddenly taking quite a firm stance on paid? Because even though it's the UK, presumably that extends to all sites, and Google is in the UK, even though they're global. So presumably it affects Google's site, as in your application. So as an organisation, presumably you'd be under some kind of obligation to ensure that paid reviews, bogus reviews, etc., and kind of an obligation to make sure that you're not promoting sites that are maybe taking like payments from brands.
I don't know what's happening in the UK. So on the one hand, I don't know what specifically is happening there. On the other hand, I can't comment on legal issues. So it might be that this is just being handled from multiple sides at the same time. I don't think the timing here was based on any specific kind of legal situation. It's really just so in general, it's just that the web spam team sees, oh, this is a bigger pattern of a problem that is causing problems in our search results. Therefore, we need to find a way to handle that. And sometimes that's something that can be done on an algorithmic level. Sometimes that's something that we need to say, well, we need to manually go through these and do manual actions where it makes sense.
Mm.
So
Because
it might just be that this is kind of like bubbling up as a problem across the board, and other people are seeing the same thing, but from the other side. So I doubt like the legal people are saying, well, these links, follow, no follow, that's the disclosure that we need. They probably want something kind of written on these articles and saying, well, I'm writing this review because of my business relationship with this company.
Because their argument, the Competition and Markets Authority, is you're influencing. Well, it's unfair. You know, not Google, but just brands that are paying bloggers to give positive reviews or, you know, promote their them over another organisation or another brand. That's their point. It's quite a big study that's gone on actually this last year, and it does mention working with international partners. So on a lot of the legal docs that they've got going around at the minute.
Yeah.
I
don't know.
John, how does Google know the difference? I mean, you know, it was raised about Matt doing a video on this, and I've seen that video as well. But you know, there are plenty. You know, it must be very difficult to know the difference simply by reading a blog, whether things are that, you know, there's some kind of manipulative paid relationship going on versus there's simply someone that's let someone borrow one of their products to review it, give it back again because, you know, that's just normal business.
I don't have an absolute answer for that. I think that's also one of the positive parts of doing like a manual review on these kind of things, in that people don't just have like a black box mindset and say yes or no, yes or no. They'll sometimes take some of these pieces of content and go to maybe other people on the team and kind of discuss what's happening here, maybe look at the bigger picture on the site, maybe look at the bigger picture around that kind of content to try to figure out what's like the bigger picture view of this specific situation. So from that point of view, I don't think there's like this simple, like we look for this piece of text and then it must be like this point of view. We really kind of try to use our best judgment as well when we do these things. And sometimes what comes out is maybe we'll get it wrong. So if someone does a reconsideration request and say, hey, you misunderstood my content. I actually have no business relationship at all, and your manual action is totally wrong, then that's something that we'll look at as well. And because humans are looking at the reconsideration requests, they'll say, well, maybe we got this one wrong. Maybe we have a systematic problem that we need to solve on our side, or where we can make bigger improvements as well.
But in reality, is there not a risk or a danger that what might happen is that a number of, you know, blogs or media or whatever will simply no-follow all of their reviews simply because they don't want to kind of get into these kind of issues and have to file reconsideration requests? I mean, it's just maybe.
I doubt it, but it's possible to some extent, because obviously no-follow is something that not everyone really understands what it does. If you're, I don't know, a blogger that focuses on topics that are non-technical in nature, then maybe you don't really understand what HTML does. You kind of just copy and paste your text into the editor and publish it like that. So that's something where we try to find the right line to walk with our messaging and with the way that we actually do manual actions.
That's what I've always thought. That no follow, just by definition, is unnatural, because you've put that on there. I mean, unless you're Wikipedia and you have a policy that every single thing is. But we've worked with a lot of, because we're a gift company, we get a lot of smaller blogs that, as you say, they just literally don't understand what a follow or no follow is. They've just written something, so they don't know the difference. So it's actually artificial to put a no-follow on it, and no-follow didn't even exist a few years ago. It was introduced to be unnatural. A link is a link that should provide a way for you to find something, obviously users, but it was introduced as a an artificial measure.
Well, yeah, I mean, we introduce it primarily for, on the one hand, so that you can link to advertising, and on the other hand, if there's something that you don't really trust that well, for example, user-generated content, where you might want to put that there as well. So that's, from that point of view, that's something that is there. But I think from a manual actions point of view and from an algorithmic point of view, even we understand that you can't like solve 100% of all of these issues. But when we look at the bigger picture and we see, oh, 90% of the people are not no-following this, and you don't have it in the code that you kind of provide on your pages to linking, for example, or with the content that you send out for the review request, then that's something where we might say, well, it looks like maybe you're headed down this unnatural road. But on the other hand, if you kind of mention no-follow in whatever you send out, and you see that most of the people who are linking to your site for these kind of reviews are using no-follow, then we say, well, it's like there's some people that just don't understand how no-follow works, and that's the way it is on the internet. We can't like expect that everything is perfect. So we kind of have to understand how the web works and react where we need to, and kind of hold ourselves back where we say, well, this is kind of just the way it is at the moment. I think what we're trying to avoid is a situation where we recognize that bloggers have some paid reviews, and we recognize they're not no-following those links, and we say, well, we can't algorithmically differentiate between paid reviews and normal reviews on this blog. Therefore, we'll just kind of ignore all links on this blog. And I think that would kind of be the worst situation, where we don't tell these people that actually we're having trouble understanding what you actually mean here, and instead just ignore all of the links on their site. So this way.
Would you ever do more than that? Would you ever do more than simply ignore the kind of the link outbound links from their blog? Would you, for example, if they didn't do anything, hit them with a real ranking style penalty?
I can't say for like forever, but at least the cases I've seen, we do try to do something appropriate, in the sense that if we can recognize that they're doing this accidentally, we're not going to like demote their website from search, because they're not trying to be spammers. They're not trying to abuse the web search results. It's essentially something where we have to find the right measure to kind of respond to that.
John, can I ask you a quick question? Last
Sure.
one, probably. HTML improvements in Search Console comes up with duplicate title tags and meta descriptions. Is it built to take into consideration if canonicals are set up and if rel prev, rel next are set up? So I'm trying to understand whether or not, if it's in there, it's because it's not, the fix is not right, or it's broken, or it's not even considering that. So
it's tricky, because especially with rel canonical, we have to index that page first before we can process the rel canonical. So from that point of view, what can definitely happen is that a page with a rel canonical is indexed for a brief period of time, and then shown in the HTML improvement section as well. So I would see that kind of as a guide towards issues that maybe you weren't aware of. And if you can recognize that these pages all have a rel canonical already, then that's like fine.
But then if, say, that situation did occur, then I could resend Googlebot to that page, and then it would, or it would naturally disappear still, because it can recognize that canonical, or the fact that it's been set up as a series, proper pagination.
I don't think it would update it that quickly if you just resubmitted it to indexing. It's probably almost like a secondary cycle that runs on the side with the HTML improvements. So that's probably something where you'd need to look at it for a longer period of time, maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so after kind of the re-indexing part.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, John.
All right. Maybe we can take one more question, and then I need to head out. What else is on your mind?
John, it's Simon here again. I actually posed a question which you cunningly avoided, which was about this thing that people are talking about recently called zombie traffic, which isn't the most. It's not a great name for something which I think a number of sites are experiencing. I think different people associate different things with what some people call something zombie traffic and some people call other things zombie traffic. But it's been talked about quite a lot recently. And I just was wondering, the kind of the symptoms seem to roughly be that people are seeing, or some sites, us included, will see consistent daily traffic volume. So there's nothing, they're quite unremarkable in terms of the daily traffic volume across organic and paid on Google. But what appears to be happening is the traffic quality varies massively. There might be a sudden switch into poor traffic quality, which could be identified by a sudden drop in conversions, whether that's on an e-commerce site, it might be sales or basket ads or sign-ups or whatever, and then suddenly it'll switch back again. And different people see this in different ways, and it was more to try to understand if you might have any explanation of why this kind of might be happening, if you think it's real, if it's a side effect of anything that might be happening at the moment, if certain sites might be more susceptible to this kind of thing than other sites.
So this is traffic you're seeing from search, or just traffic in general to the site?
No, it's only from Google search.
Only from search. I'm not aware of anything specific that would cause anything like that to happen. So the zombie traffic that I've seen talked about a lot recently is more the kind that's kind of in analytics, where like random analytics spammers will hit the analytics code but not actually go to the site. But I'm not aware of what could be kind of causing the traffic to be lower quality from time to time. That seems kind of hard to kind of track down. But I guess this is something where maybe if you have a specific site where you're seeing these kind of changes and you can send me a brief timeline of what you're seeing, then I could try to track down what specifically on our site is happening during those periods.
Yep, that's correct. I can do that. I mean, I don't want to take up people's time here, but if I could describe it, it feels very much like mismatched traffic, like at certain points in time, either perhaps on the longer tail or ambiguous queries or whatever, that there is a mismatch of traffic switching in, and then at a certain period afterwards that will switch out again. It's been talked about for a while. I think the point that you made is right, which is that various people talk about this in different ways. A lot of people do talk about zombie traffic in the way where they've suddenly seen a hike in traffic volume, but that doesn't convert. It just seems to be perhaps artificial traffic, bots, or someone attacking them, or whatever it is. But I think that what I'm talking about and what a number of people are also seeing is this kind of no change in the traffic volume, but more of a traffic quality kind of mismatch, switching in and out thing. But I'll send you some details, and hopefully you might be able to work it out.
Yeah, that'll be useful. At least from my side, I'm not aware of anything that would like cause a site to kind of jump between different kinds of rankings, for example, there. But I don't know. Maybe something quirky is happening that we need to take a look at on our side. Maybe it's just kind of fluctuations as usual, as they can sometimes happen in search.
Okay, thanks.
All right. With that, let's take a break here. I've set up the next Hangout, which is, I think, in 3 weeks, something like that. So if you have more questions, things that we missed that we didn't get to, feel free to drop those questions there. And as always, in between, if you have questions, you're welcome to drop by the help forums as well to kind of chat with the top contributors and other people there as well. All right. So with that, I wish you all a great weekend. Thank you all for joining. Thanks for all of the questions, and see you again in one of the future ones.
Have a good holiday, John.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
See you later.